Now, if this truly is the end of globalization or globalism, you're going to have a reduced number of goods available at a higher price point. And the question is, because America is not run by a dictator, it's not run by something like the Chinese Communist Party, but is a quote-unquote liberal democracy. What happens in the midterms or in 4 years' time when people were like, hold on a second, Trump made everything more expensive. He shut down my business. I'm unable to make a living anymore because basically the economy's been fucked. Maybe I'll vote for Gavin Newsom. Maybe I'll get into Gary economics. Maybe I've had enough of billionaires giving tax cuts to other billionaires while I can barely buy a sandwich anymore because the sandwich now costs $12. So this is really the reality that we're looking at. If it's true, Trump has ended globalism. Now, it's very early to say. I am skeptical, as I just talked about, as to whether Trump really has ended globalism. We will know, because if in 3 months' time we're not talking about tariffs anymore, but we're talking about, whether Russell Brand should have gone to jail for rape, or we're talking about some other bullshit, you'll know that this was not a permanent change in the structure of production. This was not, as Fernand Braudel would call it, a change in the rhythm of everyday life. But then again, it could be. So that is really, it's very early to say, but that is really the opinions that are out there. My opinion still tends towards a lot of this stuff will just dissipate ultimately. Let's pretend if Scott Greer is right, and all of this is just a negotiation strategy to get Mark Carney to drop any tariffs coming from Canada, or to get a proper free trade deal with the EU, or to get free trade between Britain and America, which we already had. So I don't know what the tariffs were for, etc., etc. Then all that's happened is, after this week of noise, we've gone back to status quo ante. Now, there are other possibilities. For example, because this has been so big, and because people are saying this is the biggest change in trade for 100 years, blah, 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 it could be that China steps in and says, well, look, America can't be trusted anymore. America is not a serious not a serious partner in the world, because it's just trying to bully people all the time, and it's just doing all this sort of bullshit. We only care about business. We're the champions of free trade now. And there's been intimations that China could do that as well, in which case they could actually just try to continue quote unquote globalism, and just write off the American domestic market, which will naturally cause a big, there'll be a big consumer market gone for a lot of people. But they could just try to keep the show on the road, which I think has been the basic strategy from what I can see of all of the other powers in the world. They're just like, well, no, we're not. There's too much stuff, basically. We've got too much sunk cost in all of this. Let's just keep the show running. I don't know, to be honest. It's very early to say, but all of those possibilities are available. I tend towards the ultimate, nothing ever happens, of course. And you see, here's my thing, right? If people truly believe that globalism has ended on Liberation Day, the 2nd of April, 2 days ago, people truly believe that this is it now, that we're in a new world, a brave new world, then they're surely not. They're not acting like it, are they? Nobody's acting like it. It's the end of globalism as we know it. Watch my show on Tuesday. It's still like business as usual for everybody. There's not. I mean, it's it doesn't feel like this earth-shattering thing has happened. So, yeah, that's it. That's all I can say, really. But from what I can see, I'm very skeptical as to whether this plan is going to work in terms of reindustrializing America, because the fundamentals that led to this situation in the first place, right, which was summed up by Brooks Adams over 100 years ago. Capital will just go to where labor is cheapest, right? Well, unless Trump has kind of suddenly made America a cheaper place to manufacture in than it is at the moment, if he's reduced, if he's able to reduce labor costs and get America competitive with, say, the Czech Republic, as an example, I don't see how this is going to solve the issue. I really don't. But it could. I mean, who knows? It could. We will see. I always tend towards the most grandiose claims almost never are the case. And I tend towards thinking nothing ever happens, but who knows? One thing I would say is that it is quite fun, I guess, to see a lot of the bellicose rhetoric between all the different nations. So it certainly feels like this is rather different from David Cameron world, for example, or do you remember Angela Merkel world or something like that, where everybody was kind of cozy and nice and so on. Certainly feels like a different world from that. But whether it's going to produce the results that Trump supporters want remains to be seen. I suspect not. I was also interested. Somebody pointed out to me this morning that that old Tone is back on the scene. One of the funniest things was, as this was reported, it says Tony Blair makes a rare intervention, right? A rare intervention. I'm like, where have you been? He only intervenes every single week. I mean, he's always running his mouth, Blair. But he is basically urging Keir Starmer not to retaliate, to not go tit for tat. Basically, you can see this reported in the Independent. In a rare intervention, the former Prime Minister says it's not in the UK's best interest to hit back with its own tariffs. I actually had a look at this once, the UK-US trade relationship, and we don't actually trade that much. We don't actually export much stuff to America, and we don't actually have many American goods here either. Bizarrely, we're not particularly big trade partners with America, which I was a little bit. I remember during Brexit looking at all of that, and we don't trade with them as much as you'd think. In services, yes. In finance, in financial stuff, yes. But in terms of actual stuff, it's not that much. I saw a thing going around. The BBC woman was using Games Workshop models as an example. I was okay, all right. That's one of the goods we I don't think 10% tariffs on Games Workshop models is going to rock the economy too much. So seems like our position with America is not that dependent. Where it's going to hurt more is in these countries who are very dependent on selling into the US domestic market, on importing into America. But if Scott Greer is right, and this is all just a trade negotiation position, it's not really the end of globalization. It's just a means of getting even freer trade. So we'll see. It remains to be seen. I want to do a video soon on something called the Mark Carney paradox. I've asked Black Horse to come back on, or any Canadian, Endeavour, if you're watching. I'd be interested to talk about this, which is that the more Trump threatens these like smaller countries like Canada or Denmark or whatever, the more they don't back down, the more they just kind of remain resilient as the David against the Goliath, right? Standing up to the bully and all of that. So it doesn't actually result in the thing that he wants. And this is what interests me. Is like, well, how many times have we seen Trump make a threat and then not follow through with the threat? I just think of really simple terms, like my own parenting of AAA as a father. If I make a threat and I don't follow through, she knows I'm not serious, right? So if I say I'm going to put your Barbie doll in the bin, I better put it in the bloody bin, otherwise she's going to take the mick out of me, right? And what I see Trump doing time and again is making these really like big claims and threats, and then not doing it, not actually doing it. And also, Mark Carney hasn't backed down. So I don't really understand that. Maybe I'm not like super IQ high IQ enough to understand the true art of the deal. But it feels like since he's come back in, since like in the past 2 or 3 months, we've seen several iterations of him just threatening people, them not backing down, and then Trump like just kind of gives in or whatever. It's weird. It's a very weird thing. I don't really understand what he's doing, which is why my view is much more towards it's not a 4D chess plan. It's not a super duper bit of strategy. It is literally just here's some noise for the news cycle for the next 2 weeks. And in a month's time, nobody will be talking about it. This week, we're talking about tariffs. A month ago, we were talking about Vladimir Zelensky blow up in the White House. Well, what happened with that? Did the war in Ukraine end? No. Did he get a deal with Vladimir Putin? No. Right? That's what happened with it. Do you remember back at the start of the year? I remember Tom Luongo, whatever his name was, Stormy Waters and all these guys. Mark my words, they said, look who's getting their way. Pete Quinones told me, just pay attention to who's getting their way. Stormy Waters told me, 45 days I give Netanyahu and he'll be history. He's out of there. He's done. Look how Trump put his foot down and made a ceasefire happen in Israel overnight. Well, that didn't fucking happen, did it? Because Netanyahu didn't go away. It's been more than 45 days now. The ceasefire ended, and America's back to bombing the Houthis in Yemen, threatening Iran with bombs in World War III. So the more everything happens, the more nothing happens, you see. This, right, last month, you were all telling me the war in Ukraine is over. This month, you're all telling me the globalism is over. What's it going to be next month? What will it be the month after that? Or are we just going to keep on hopping between these crazy news cycles, believing everything is happening, while at the same time, nothing ever happens? So, color me skeptical. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. But for me, the pattern has been towards nothing really happening. We'll see.